Welcome back to Meaning in Christ. Today we're exploring the concept of the Antichrist, a figure whose meaning has transformed dramatically over centuries. The Antichrist has become a staple character in Christian end-times prophecy, often envisioned as a powerful political figure opposing Jesus at the end of the world. But where does this idea come from, and how did it evolve to become the iconic villain that dominates modern pop culture? In today's video, we'll take a look from the New Testament origins of the Antichrist through early Christian writings, medieval interpretations, and the rise of modern evangelical thought. To understand the Antichrist, we first need to look at where the term itself comes from. The word Antichrist is derived from the Greek Antichristos, combining anti, meaning opposing or in place of, and Christos, meaning anointed one or Messiah. The term suggests two interpretations: someone who opposes Christ or someone who pretends to take Christ's place. Interestingly, the term Antichrist only appears 5 times in the New Testament, and only in 2 letters, 1 John and 2 John. The author of 1 John uses Antichrist generically to describe anyone who denies that Jesus is the Messiah. He even notes, "As you have heard that Antichrist is coming, so now many Antichrists have come." Rather than referring to a singular end-times villain, Antichrist here seems to be a category for those opposing Jesus' message. In 2 John, the writer continues this theme, referring to anyone who denies Jesus' humanity as the deceiver and the Antichrist. The term is used similarly to words like heretic or apostate and lacks any implication of a future apocalyptic role. This makes sense when we consider that the context of these letters was about defining boundaries within the early Christian community. Scholar Robert C. Fuller suggests that in 1 John, the term Antichrist specifically refers to those who left the community and denied that Jesus was the Messiah. Thus, the Antichrist was more about rejecting teachings within the faith rather than an enemy in a cosmic end-times battle. As Christianity grew, however, writers started to reinterpret the concept of the Antichrist, merging it with other biblical passages. They especially connected the Johannine concept of the Antichrist to figures in 2 Thessalonians and Revelation. Irenaeus, an early Christian theologian writing in the 2nd century, is credited as one of the first to transform the Antichrist into an apocalyptic figure. In his work, Against Heresies, Irenaeus combines the Antichrist of 1 John with the man of lawlessness described in 2 Thessalonians. This man of lawlessness would deceive many with signs and wonders before Jesus' return. Irenaeus argues that these passages point to a future figure who would actively oppose Christ, introducing the idea of a singular evil character at the end of time. Irenaeus also drew from Daniel's prophecies about beasts and horns, describing the Antichrist as an enemy empowered by Satan to mislead people. By synthesizing these texts, Irenaeus crafted a composite character, a powerful ruler and deceiver. This portrayal marked a shift, turning the Antichrist from a general category of heretics to a specific villain. As Christian theology continued to evolve, the Antichrist became a central character in apocalyptic thinking, especially in medieval Europe. In works like the Tiburtine Sibyl, an apocalyptic text widely read in the Middle Ages, the Antichrist is described as both a political and religious figure who rises at the end of the world. In this story, he opposes a figure called the Last Emperor and deceives many before being defeated by Christ. This medieval legend added details about the Antichrist's origins, even linking him to the tribe of Dan. This association reflects an anti-Jewish sentiment common in medieval Europe, where some Christians viewed the Antichrist as a Jewish figure who would deceive the masses. Other medieval texts took even more creative liberties with the character. The dialogue between Jesus and the devil, for example, presents the Antichrist as the devil incarnate, born through miraculous circumstances. These medieval interpretations expanded the mythos, turning the Antichrist into a fully developed character with a detailed background, specific motivations, and evil ambitions. The Antichrist continued to captivate Christian thinkers and the general public into the modern era, and eventually became a fixture in literature, film, and other media. In movies like Rosemary's Baby and The Omen, we see the Antichrist portrayed as a demonic supernatural figure destined to oppose Christ. These portrayals often reflect modern anxieties about political power, societal corruption, or even the unknown forces of evil at work in the world. This cinematic Antichrist serves as a potent symbol, embodying fears about everything from nuclear war to political tyranny. And while Hollywood's version may be sensationalized, it speaks to the ways in which the Antichrist figure has grown from a theological concept into a broader cultural icon. A major factor in shaping the contemporary understanding of the Antichrist is dispensationalism, a 19th-century theological movement popularized by John Nelson Darby. Darby's teachings introduced the concept of a pre-tribulation rapture, where God would spare Christians from the 7 years of tribulation described in Revelation. According to dispensationalist thought, this tribulation would be marked by the rise of the Antichrist, a global leader who would unite the world, deceive the masses, and ultimately clash with Christ. The Scofield Reference Bible, published in the early 20th century, brought dispensationalist teachings to a wider audience, cementing the idea of a specific, powerful Antichrist in popular Christian thought. This theological perspective had a massive influence on American evangelicalism, especially as it coincided with rising interest in end-times prophecy. Perhaps the most famous example of this view is the Left Behind series by Tim LaHaye and Jerry Jenkins. In these books, the Antichrist is depicted as Nicolae Carpathia, a charismatic political figure who gains control through the United Nations and ultimately declares himself supreme ruler. This portrayal of the Antichrist as a charismatic global leader resonated with evangelical audiences, who saw Carpathia as the embodiment of dispensationalist prophecy. Today's concept of the Antichrist is a rich tapestry woven from centuries of interpretation. The term began as a general label for those opposed to Christ, then transformed into a singular, apocalyptic villain through the writings of early theologians like Irenaeus. By the medieval period, the Antichrist had become a legendary figure in Christian lore, further developed by a mixture of cultural fears and religious interpretations. And in the modern era, dispensationalism has cemented the idea of a literal Antichrist who will rise to power in the end times. Whether one subscribes to these interpretations or not, the Antichrist remains a powerful symbol within Christian thought. At its core, this concept of the Antichrist serves as a reminder of the tension between good and evil, truth and deception, and Christ's ultimate victory over all opposing forces. In many ways, the evolving narrative of the Antichrist reflects changing perspectives on who Christians believe Jesus is. As the image of the Antichrist grew more complex, it also magnified the importance of Christ's role as Redeemer and victor over evil. For Christians, the Antichrist may be an ominous figure, but he is ultimately a defeated foe, a reminder that no force of opposition can overcome the power of Christ. If you found this video meaningful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and be sure to check out my other videos. For those interested in diving deeper into topics like these, check out the link in the description where you'll find ebooks that explore these subjects in more detail and help support the channel. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time as we continue exploring the intersections of faith and history.